Hello, good morning, welcome. Nobody's watching again, so streaming again to a massive audience of 0. But this is more for me anyway. One day. Anyway, my name is Frank. This is Premarket Wake Up. The community I'm trying to build is called No More Paper Trading. It's trying to move away from paper trading and actually making money, making a career change. That is my single goal. I have no intentions of making money off of anyone who joins the community in any way. That's part of the reason I started it. I'm just sick of seeing all the ads on Stock Twits or any of the other platforms. You know, join my chat room and pay me monthly and I'll pick stocks for you. If you think about it, you're not supposed to think about it, but if you think about it, why aren't they just using their great picks and making money? Why do they have to sell you anything? Alright, that's it. Anyway, as I go live, there is no news. Great, my broker just disconnected for random reason. Alright, first there is no news coming out right now. There's a Fed speech in a little bit. A few Fed speeches today, but not as major as yesterday, which I didn't even look at any of the key points for that. I'll look at that live right now. Not right now, but after I go over. No, I'll look at it right now. Well, let me just configure something here. So, alright, so I can find what he said, but okay. So basically he affirmed expectations of more rate cuts in October and December. Okay. So he's bought and paid for in some ways. Well, who cares? They're all bought and paid for. If you didn't have an incentive, it wouldn't be capitalism, and I'd rather know someone's incentive than not know it. Alright, so that might explain the huge uptick in the Russell this morning, or in the overnight. Geez, it just keeps disconnecting. A lot of people reported in the Bitcoin markets anyway, which might be one of the reasons I stay away from it. Although I have considered trading Bitcoin lately. Just futures mostly. But a lot of people recorded on Friday that they would just get disconnected from the broker. They wouldn't be able to place orders, yet they would see other people placing orders. To the point that actually some of the brokers, could you call Coinbase a broker? I guess so. Coinbase was one of them, and I think one of the other ones, they actually refunding some people. But people hint that that could be manipulation. And you hear the same thing all the time. It's rigged, it's rigged, it's rigged. Well, I'm here to tell you it's not rigged. a lot of times people that tell you that, they need human beings are just like that. They need an excuse as to why they lost anything. It couldn't ever have been themselves that made the foolish trade. It has to be that markets are rigged. So they are stacked a little bit in favor of people that have tons of money. That's how markets work. But time and time again, you see people, normal people, turning small accounts into very, very large accounts through discipline. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's go over the overnight moves. Some key areas looking at for today. I'm reluctant to trade over the past few days. I made a couple good wins on Friday when the market dove down. I didn't see a great reason to get back in yesterday when it reached a bottom in the early morning. I think it was the early morning. Yeah, because to me there was no real indication that it was gonna... I guess I could have been watching it closer and seen that, but I get jumpy when the market is like this, when the smallest hint of news could send it spiraling. There's a feeling, you can feel it just watching the price action. That it's jumpy, more or less. So price will respect key levels, but not as much. I just have a feeling that I should stay away until things settle down. Just like in April, I got that same feeling. I stayed away until things settled down, and they did. They settled down for 5 months, 6 months, more. But we'll see. Some are saying this could be a sign of a market crash, which I am actually rooting for. It is healthy for markets to pull back, to what would be the name? Have a healthy bear market. I don't think it should be caused by one tweet, but I can't control that. There's a lot of other fundamental reasons why the market should not keep going up anymore. So the ES in the overnight, trending up almost the entire night, breaking yesterday's high at around 4 or 5 a.m. and now trying for trying for last month's close. We'll see what happens. I would have been more suspect if price drove right through without looking back. That would have been indication of some major news event. It actually might be healthy to see price hesitant to break through very quickly. We'll see what happens. Going into the day, I'd be looking at that level for sure, the last month's close. If we get above it, look for a pullback to that, as well as last month's high, which also sits on this shelf that was created. Was that last week or the week before? Yeah, last week. The shelf was actually created at last month's high. So look out for that level too. So being that we have a lot to get through there, I don't think I would want to trade that much. If we head lower, well, you're looking at last month or yesterday's close. And beyond that, I'm not really sure. I would say yesterday's low. If we get down there, though, that would be it'd be high volatility to take us down there. I'm not much of a high volatility trader. So if I'm trading off the probability that when price reaches, my basic strategy goes like this. There's a decent probability that when price reaches a key level that's not only significant as in yesterday's opening range high, last month's close, last month's high, but also that I've seen price bounce off it in the past pretty often. And you could see growing resistance at that level or support. The probability that price will reach that area and bounce off within so much range that I can scalp it. That is my basic strategy. I'm still developing a lot of the details, as in when do I take a longer trade, because I do that sometimes, such as on Friday I took a longer trade, but I didn't really feel comfortable with it because I had to set all sorts of alarms when I went to bed. The reason I'm attracted to day trading is you can go flat at the end of the day. Anyway, yeah, the details of exactly how I trade is a bit more discretionary. I often get urges to make it more strategic, but it might not be possible, especially with all the different markets. Anyway, the strategy relies on high probability that price will respect these levels. And I can tell that at times since Friday, that hasn't always been the case. Probability is not quite in your favor. So I've been avoiding trading. And I can't really define how I know one way or the other, except for when you see sharp increases or decreases out of nowhere, or crazy reactions to unscheduled news or unscheduled events. You see orders on the tape into the thousands. That's when I'm like, I don't know. I'll take a little break. But when I cannot trade, I lose a little part of my soul that I desperately want back. Let's move on to the NQ. Oh, of course it didn't stay connected. Overnight, the NQ is very similar to the ES, perhaps a bit stronger. Not really. But the NQ is already broke above previous month's close, which is where price was held up for a good part of yesterday, before breaking down at, again, some other news, a tweet. But here's the thing, how do you know? I mean, let's look back at Friday. Friday, a tweet broke the market. Or truth, tweet, whatever. How do you know when it's over? How do you know when the bloodbath is over? RSI was already way overextended. Do you just take a chance? That is, because price did not really respect any certain levels. It halted momentarily at several different areas. And I've never seen this before in futures at 4:50 in the afternoon. This huge spike down. I had a feeling it was over at that point, and I traded anyway. But more in the shorter term, how I am more comfortable trading, I don't know. I don't know when at any moment a tweet will come in. And yesterday, how'd you know? How'd you know at this level it was going to stop at 24,697? There's nothing significant in that area, except for this little pool of volume here, where it stopped earlier in the day. It was actually opening range high from 2 days ago. I would have never placed a trade on that. And from that point, it's recovered entirely and then some. That's what I mean. It's just a little too random. But the fact that the market did not react as badly as Friday to another bad tweet or good tweet or whatever, depending on the side you're on, it's a sign that perhaps we're coming back to more stability in the markets. And by stability, I don't mean return to making all-time new highs. I mean just normal price movements, normal volatility. And maybe it's seasonal. Maybe it is coming into earnings season every year. We get this type of reaction. My memory is not so good. So levels to look out for the NQ. If we break previous month's high, which we barely did Monday night for a very brief moment, I would say look out for that. Look for another failure of it. This time strength is not as overextended. Yeah, I don't know. It looks like less volume. Trying to make the push again. I'd have to watch price action, which I will do as soon as we're done here. If we do head lower, I would look out for, again, last month's close. Price would probably hold up there. And then yesterday's close. Although if we reject it again, I don't know. I don't see us. Yeah, I'm going to stick with I don't know. The Russell just made all-time new highs. I think all-time new highs. No. Monthly new highs in the overnight. I would assume this is from the news that Powell is definitely hinting towards 2 cuts this year before the end of the year. Maybe that can stave off the apocalypse, as some people on stock tweets call it. I would call it, I'd be a bit more reserved and call it a market correction. I went through it the other day with some family. I showed them, even during the 2008 financial crisis, within a year the market was rebounding. I think the only time it was, well, I think even the Great Depression, it wasn't down forever. As far as society goes, there might be rebounding effects, but for the stock market, it almost always just picks right back up and starts making money again. Anyway, I don't have a level going higher for the Russell. I'd have to look at the continuous maybe, but even that can be difficult because the levels will be a little bit off. Let's try it for a sec, why not? No, that didn't do it. Oh, so on the continuous we are making all-time new highs. See, that's why it's hard to trade off of it. See how different the other continuous is. Very similar. So instead, let's look at the hell's the name of the ETF for the Russell? Not DIA. No. IWM. Yeah, all-time new highs according to that. So I don't really have a level that we'll stop at. I'm not that great at discerning that. Except for the pivot points. Ah. But look at that recovery from Friday. I mean, yesterday, a bit of a bloodbath. I have no advice for the Russell because it is, I'd say, if price action remains in favor of buyers, look for pullbacks. Of course. Dow's also climbing pretty good and just surpassed in the overnight opening or last month's close. We're now sitting at yesterday's high. Dow is not making all-time new highs. I'd be more likely to trade this if we remain over the last month's close. I might trade off it. But I don't know, I keep on reverting to being careful. One tweet could mess you up. And I haven't gotten extremely comfortable with scalping with stops. There's no way in TradingView to set it up for that, really. At least one I haven't figured out yet. If anyone has, well, nobody's watching, but if anyone ever watches this and has recommendations for a broker that allows very complex keybinds and macros for those types of trades, let me know. What I would want specifically is buy at my mouse pointer with an automatic OCO stop setup. I don't need a profit target. And then what would I want for a profit target? I would want then to be able to set a profit that would cancel the stop. So basically a bracket order. But at my mouse pointer. I think you can do that in TradingView. Maybe I'm wrong. Alright, gold. Of course. Everything disconnected for some reason. Another reason I'm very weary is gold keeps making all-time new highs. Why is this money pouring into gold? Who's doing it and why? I mean, who was buying at gold at all-time new highs thinking it was just going to keep going up? A lot of people say, and I think there's something to it. I'm not going to say they're correct because economics is not a science. That people are piling gold into gold because they know a major pullback's coming to the indices. Another reason could be the rate cut. But I'm staying away from gold. I think even gold is affected by tweets or whatever. Yeah. That was 3:30 yesterday. Yeah. So that's it. Oil mostly down in the overnight, well, flat in the overnight, except for recently. happened. So the market reacting to the rate cut news is good news overall. It's signs that we're going to return to, like I said earlier, less volatile market. And if anything, VIX is a sign of that. I'm going to take a look at that in just a sec. But oil in the overnight remaining stuck on yesterday's close before breaking above. You would have seen it somewhat in RSI, but I mean, how long would you have had to wait for this breakout? All right, let's take a look at the VIX. VIX is down in the overnight, yet we are not quite to pre-Friday levels, although we are coming down a bit more. Not as low, and that's of note, not as low as we were on Monday. Which that is significant. We are higher in price today on Wednesday, yet relative to somewhat, well, I don't know, that's a hard one. More or less, VIX is not where I want it to be before I start placing a lot more of my types of trades. I'm probably going to trade today somewhat, but I'm going to be very cautious and only take like 30-second trades. But that's about it for today. Let's take a look at headlines in the FedWatch tool, and then I'm out of here. Earnings is another big thing. We had some earnings this morning already. I would assume it's higher than yesterday. Not much higher. Maybe that's as high as it gets, really. We're actually lower for December than yesterday, which is interesting. Despite Powell saying, basically promising, I wouldn't say promising, he never does that, for a rate cut. I don't understand this. Maybe other members of the Fed are saying otherwise. All right, earnings. What is today? Wednesday, right? I thought today was Tuesday. ASML. I think they already released the earnings. Let me double check that. I'm sorry, hold on one sec. More spam. All right. Strangely enough, ASML is not listed on TradingView's earnings calendar. I don't know if it's because they don't give a time for it. This calendar is quite bugged, which is why I don't like to use it, but there aren't a lot of free options out there that are great as far as seeing results and everything like that, and the total package, in other words. Even though I pay for bar chart, their earnings calendar sucks. I don't know why I pay for them. So they did report earnings. I don't know why it's not on. I've actually pointed that out to them before. And you get the usual AI answer. We're noted. It's noted. But how do you not have? Eight hours ago. I wouldn't consider that morning. So maybe they do have it on their calendar. No. No, they still don't have it. Whatever. Anyway, more earnings coming out. Progressive is 9:30. Couple other minor ones. Tomorrow morning, more. Numbers don't really matter to me. I guess it's not a good idea to trade this week. At any moment, this could also influence the market drastically. So you might be watching price action and think, oh, bulls are in charge and we're at a key level and I can just scalp off that key level going long. And then in seconds it changes. Which does happen in normal non-earnings weeks, but it's not as pronounced. All right, let's take a look at headlines and I'm done. Bank of America, Morgan Stanley had good earnings. A lot of the ones I've seen, though, it's trending down slightly. They're beating, but they're not beating as much as they were. Let's see what they have to say about China's retaliation. Oh, Bitcoin is tanking, isn't it? I wouldn't call that tanking. So basically, Bitcoin has not recovered since then, despite, I don't know how I didn't see this. Let's see if I can bring up. Okay, so relative to, let's say, the recovery of the ES, this is the daily Bitcoin. That was Friday. The only recovery there was on Sunday. And now we're just trending lower and lower, despite the ES recovering nicely. Maybe that's a sign that the ES will not recover entirely. I could see that. The two markets weren't exactly correlated. I'll try to compare the two. That doesn't really work. Not same percentage scale. Somewhat correlated, I would say. We'll see. Again, I said I'm rooting for a fall in the equities, a healthy pullback. But I guess it's rare this time of year, coming into Christmas. We'll probably get it right after Christmas. Or maybe before, who knows. I'm done. Good night, not good night. Good morning, good luck, goodbye.